Okay. I'd like to thank the committee for this invitation to testify. I also regret not being able to attend at Strasbourg directly. I wasn't able to attend due to travel. Before I begin the prepared remarks, I have to open with a short disclaimer. With the greatest respect, I reserve the right to decline any question for which providing an answer would prove contrary to the public interest or to the national security of any state. I caution that if some of my comments appear more general than one might expect, given my technical expertise and direct personal experience with many of these programs, I apologize in advance for the lack of precision and ask that you bear in mind that particular general answers may be the product of principle or circumstance rather than lack of specific knowledge. I'm proud of the fact that despite the dramatic protestations of intelligence chiefs, no evidence has ever been shown by any government that the revelations of the last year have caused any specific harm. And the guiding principle of my participation in today's testimony is to ensure this unbroken record of serving the public interest while minimizing any potential harms continues without interruption. I also note that any facts raised in these testimony have been independently determined by journalists to serve a vital public interest. Beyond that, I remind the committee that even where there exists a compelling public interest for making a particular disclosure, I may not be able to provide additional detail. Due to failures in whistleblowing legislation in the United States, there are no legal channels available for individuals such as myself, who are employed as private contractors rather than direct federal employees, to safely testify in front of legislative committees. As such, I ask for your understanding in recognizing that despite the executive policy changes, legal reforms, and court decisions to improve the rights of others that have occurred as a result of my disclosures, I remain in a position of significant legal jeopardy. I believe last year showed that an expectation of persecution for political speech in the context of national security whistleblowing is not unreasonable. And though it goes without saying that at this point, I would like to clarify that I have no intention of harming the United States government or straining bilateral ties between any nations. My motivation is to improve government, not to bring it down. I'd like to request that my previous testimony to the EU Parliament be entered into the record so that rather than exhaustively covering previous statements, we can use this time instead to discuss programs less well understood by the public or perhaps that have been misinterpreted by journalists, as well as to address a few novel questions of particular significance that I received from this committee. To briefly summarize my testimony before EU Parliament, it established the following points we will likely touch on today, beginning and going forward from here. That the US government confirmed in at least 3 independent determinations within the last 6 months that the kind of dragnet mass surveillance we discussed today is ineffective for preventing terrorism. The government also asserted at least twice that such programs appear to have no basis in law. That Western involvement in mass surveillance set a dangerous precedent, encouraging and potentially legitimizing the activities of authoritarian governments that desire to construct similar systems.
Mr. Snowden, could I just ask you to slow down as the video link is a little difficult here and our interpreters are having some difficulties. So if you could just speak more slowly, I would appreciate it.
Absolutely. I have too much in my statement. Shall I repeat that or continue from here?
If you could continue from here, but just more slowly. Thank you.
Thank you. The U.S. National Security Agency has a directorate that has worked to intentionally subvert the privacy laws and constitutional protections of EU member states against mass surveillance. That the body of public evidence indicates mass surveillance results in societies that are not only less liberal, but less safe. That the NSA shares mass surveillance technologies with some EU member states, as well as access to its own mass surveillance systems. That reports of intelligence agencies using mass surveillance capabilities to monitor peaceful groups unrelated to any terrorist threat or national security purpose such as the United Nations Children's Fund or spying on American lawyers negotiating trade deals, are in fact accurate. That the secret court in the United States that oversees mass surveillance programs is best described as a rubber stamp court. This court has rejected only 11 out of approximately 34,000 requests made by the government over a period of 33 years. It hears arguments only from the government, and its judges are appointed by a single individual without the benefit of any outside confirmation or review. I add that this secret court was only intended to issue individual and routine warrants for surveillance, not to decide legal issues of global importance or to authorize general untargeted warrants for instance, the clandestine wiretapping of anyone in Germany, as was recently revealed. That the UK Electronic Surveillance Service, GCHQ, collected on a massive scale images from web cameras, often within bedrooms in private homes, without any individualized suspicion of wrongdoing. This activity continued even after GCHQ became aware that the vast majority had no intelligence value at all, and roughly 10% of all images upon auditing were discovered to be intensely private, depicting some form of nudity or other private intimacy. That the NSA had intentionally sought to collect similarly explicit sexual material regarding religious conservatives whose political views it disfavored and considered radical, for the purpose of exposing it to damage their reputations and discredit them within their communities. This is an unprecedented form of political interference that I don't believe has been seen elsewhere in Western governments. That no legal means currently exist to challenge such activities or to seek remedies for such abuses. That mass surveillance is used by the NSA, as well as partners and adversaries, for the purposes of economic espionage. NSA had unlawfully compromised the world's major financial transaction facilitators, to include SWIFT and Visa. And in their reports, they explicitly noted that such information provided, quote, rich personal information, unquote, including data that, quote, is not about our targets, unquote. The governments caught engaging in mass surveillance have in the last months have stopped attempting to justify the programs as being related to national security and have instead shifted to a far looser restriction of valid foreign intelligence purposes.